The rain that fell over Meridian no longer smelled like petrichor. It tasted of disinfectant and static, as if someone had wrung the last trace of innocence from the clouds and doused the city in a sour afterthought. Umbrellas were mandatory, but not for the weather. Their canopies shimmered with electrostatic fields that repelled spores before they could settle on skin. Streets rang with the hiss of air filtration vents and the hollow click of polymer gloves tapping against handheld tablets. There were no beggars, no street performers, no lovers leaning against lampposts. A hug now carried the same legal penalty as a loaded gun, and in many people's minds it was deadlier still. June Vazul broke 3 laws simply by standing on a public bridge without a face visor. He rested his bare palms on the cold iron railing and watched the river swallow the drizzle. Behind him rose the Ministry of Safety's billboard, "Attachment kills. Keep your distance." The animated poster depicted 2 silhouettes reaching for each other, only to dissolve in a cloud of lethal spores. "Do you have to taunt the cameras?" Mara asked as she approached, her black hood glistening with rain. She stood 1 pace outside arm's reach, in the manner every citizen had internalized since the Sporescape pandemic. "The ministry algorithms love an easy arrest. They'd need to reroute 4 drones from Old Town to tag my face," June said. "Their system's lagging. I sabotaged a sensor hub on the way here." Mara exhaled, half admiration, half worry. "One day they'll catch you." "One day," June conceded, "but not today." He turned and leaned backward over the railing, defying the 9-foot drop. "I decoded another tranche from the archive." Her eyes widened, though only briefly. Showing too much excitement in public was reckless. Surveillance AIs flagged anything deviating from standardized emotional profiles. She tilted her head just enough to indicate interest. "It's indisputable," he said. "The spores only activate if a host carries the old strain. The dormant one everyone and the council conveniently forgot we're all vaccinated against. Which means—" "Casual touch isn't lethal," she finished. He nodded. 3 years we've been imprisoned by a ghost." They had known this in theory, suspected it for 12 months, believed it for 6. Proof was another matter. Proof could incinerate the entire architecture of fear that kept the ministry in power. "Are you sure we can't leak the documents anonymously?" Mara asked. "Smash the illusion and let people decide for themselves?" They'd call it fabricated. Every datum originates inside their own servers. Too easy to claim tampering. He straightened. "People won't dump their armor until they see with their own eyes that hug equals life." Mara's gloved hands clenched at her sides. "Then we do it. Publicly. Once. Perfectly. With 1,000,000 feeds watching." He smiled. She'd said we, not you. June recognized the tremor beneath her bravado. She craved contact as much as he did. The first time their forearms had brushed, accidentally, while exchanging contraband code, they both felt a lightning jolt that was equal parts thrill and terror. Since then, they'd dared fingertips, quick grazes, shared breath in a shuttered cellar, but an embrace? That was capital defiance. "Tomorrow night," she said, during the renewal parade. "That's a fortress of sentries and drones." "Exactly. Everyone tuned in, everyone recording. We plant ourselves right under the beacon. The world sees, the world knows." June imagined it. The 2 of them dissolving in a lethal vapor, or walking away untouched while panic curdled into doubt. He imagined the shape of Mara's spine beneath his hands, warmth instead of latex. He imagined hope. "Tomorrow," he agreed. For 9 decades, the renewal parade had celebrated Meridian's resilience, once against floods, then famine, then wars. Now it honored survival from spores, but was in fact a pageant of sanitized despair. Attendees lined the avenue in chromed exosuits that emitted ultraviolet mist every 30 seconds. Floats rolled by carrying holographic roses. Real petals were forbidden. Too porous, too hospitable to fungus. A lone marching band played pre-recorded triumphalism, their brass instruments sealed inside transparent tubes. June and Mara blended into the river of bodies by wearing what everyone else wore: silver prophylactic garb, mirrored visors, external air packs shaped like crescent moons, except theirs were hollow shells, filtration units removed, seams sliced open for quick discard. They exchanged no words as the parade approached Central Plaza. Noise could be monitored easily, but sub-audio haptic taps on the thigh could not. 2 squeezes, checkpoint ahead. 1 tap, guard distracted. 3 pulses, time to split. They separated into opposite lanes of the crowd, following protocols rehearsed in VR dozens of times. The beacon tower loomed ahead, a monstrous obelisk that once housed weather instruments but now projected the ministry's slogans across the skyline. Its base offered a circular dais, 3 steps high, rimmed by waist-level rails. Tonight, the dais served as a stage for marshals to deliver speeches about vigilance and sacrifice. June's path funneled him toward the north rail, Mara's toward the south. Their target moment was memory burned, switchovers between Marshal Petrov's address and the drone fireworks. 35 seconds during which cameras re-angled upward, floodlights dimmed, and sentries patrolled outward to manage foot traffic. The dais would be unguarded. In simulation, they'd cleared the steps in 4 seconds, shed protective suits in 2, and locked arms by the 6th. Simulation could not capture the human detail, the crowd's muffled breath through filters, the ozone tang of sterilizer jets, or the way June's heart slammed with such force he feared his chest plate would register an anomaly and ping some sentinel AI. Still, his body climbed the real steps on cue, muscles moving inside exoshell like a puppeteer's secret fingers. Above, fireworks ignited, spheres of red turned inside out, scattering fractal petals across clouds. Electric roar masked the hiss as June unsealed his gloves. He felt the raw, sticky mist of evening on his bare fingers. Down the curve of the dais, Mara mirrored him. She looked smaller without the armor, impossibly vulnerable. He glimpsed strands of her black hair escaping the visor. She'd already unclasped it. Good. A camera drone dipped, scanning for unauthorized objects, but June had studied its pattern. Its software flagged anomalies taller than 18 inches or broader than 12. 2 human hands reached for each other. Did not qualify. The drone zipped past. June stepped forward. 5 paces remained. 4, 3, 2. His chest buzzed. Private comms from Mara, an encrypted pulse fed through a bone connection chip behind his ear. She said only, now. He leapt the rail. So did Mara. In a single motion, 11 months of absence and ache collapsed to 0 distance. Forearms slid around shoulders, chests pressed together. The contact was jarring, electric, more intense than any digital rehearsal. He inhaled her warmth, her shampoo, illegal unsanitized herbs smuggled from rooftop gardens. The salt of her skin, tiny hairs stood on his arms, sensation so crisp it felt alien after years of insulation. Spectators registered movement on stage. Visors pivoted, voices muffled by masks exhaled startled gasps. June counted seconds. 1, 2, 3. At 7, Spore activation and the old pandemic triggered visible bloom. Gray mist venting from pores. They reached 10 and nothing happened. No haze, no cough, no collapse. Screams erupted anyway. Fear was muscle memory now, not logic. Whole clusters of watchers staggered back. A dozen device lenses zoomed in. Live stream feeds plastered across internal heads-up displays broadcast 2 unarmored criminals committing lethal closeness. Algorithms at the ministry's command hub auto-flagged the feed as a biohazard incident. Protocol demanded immediate stun drone deployment, followed by hazmat incineration. But the marshals were late. Systems designed for mechanical precision buckled beneath human shock. When agents finally surged onto the dais, they hesitated. Their manuals insisted the couple should already be bleeding out, spewing spores in a deadly plume. Instead, June and Mara clung to one another, very much alive. Mara released one arm just long enough to yank free a compact projector from her discarded suit. She aimed it skyward. The beacon screen jittered, then resolved into the file June had decrypted, a line-colored graph tracing infection mortality plunging to 0 once vaccine coverage surpassed 92%. A footnote that residual spores posed no significant threat absent active carriage of the pre-vaccine strain. The chief marshal shouted, "Obstruction of public safety," but his voice warbled. He too had once buried a child. He too saw with his own eyes, a fact that defied the doctrine that had given that loss meaning. June felt Mara's heartbeat echo his. He tightened his hold and raised his voice, amplified through the dais speakers Mara had hacked. "Look at us," he said. "Touch was stolen from us by fear, long after risk was gone. Look, no spores, no death." Mara added, "We were always safe." They knew. Wild clamor rolled through the plaza. Some cried liar. Others stared at their own gloved hands, doubt opening cavities behind their ribs. One young woman, shaking, peeled a single finger out of her gauntlet and blinked as raindrops kissed her skin. Then the first drone swooped, taser probes crackling. June twisted, shielding Mara. Bolts lanced his shoulder, burning muscle and nerves. He sagged, but did not let go. Pain detonated bright shards in his vision. Still he fought to keep his voice steady. "We are proof," he rasped. "The world is watching." Power flickered across the beacon. The projector feed switched to a live close-up. June's arms encircling Mara's waist, electrodes sparking in his flesh. The image rebroadcast to every visor in a half-mile radius, then to distant suburbs as spectators screamed over open band channels. Virality outpaced censorship. Once a file seated in 1,000 devices, no ministry purge could pull every copy. A marshal leveled a sonic rifle. Another drone locked a dart on Mara's neck. Both hesitated. The target zone was occupied by an unprotected comrade, now kneeling between the couple and the guns. Officer Iad Santos, veteran of the final quarantine, father lost to spores. He looked at June, eyes wet. "Is it true?" Santos mouthed. June could barely breathe, but nodded. The officer extended a bare hand. Mara saw first. She lifted her palm from June's shoulder and placed it against Santos's. Skin to skin. Gasps fractured into stunned silence. 30 seconds later, still no spores. The sonic rifle lowered. Drones hovered in programmed uncertainty. That was when Central Command made its final mistake. Unable to process divergence from protocol, the remote AI executed a fallback. Area lockdown. Gates slammed. Sirens howled. The crowd, already quivering with fear and blooming curiosity, recoiled. Some surged toward exits now sealed. Many realized in the same instant that the ministry was far more dangerous than any hypothetical fungus. Panic mutated into fury. Hundreds tore gloves away. They grasped shoulders, cheeks, hands, gestures timid at first, then exultant. Tears cut sterile dust into muddy tracks on faces unseen for years. Overhead, the beacon screen split into fragments as citizen feeds overwhelmed the security channel. Everywhere images of laughs, embraces, rebellious touch. Dogs leapt into owners' arms. Strangers, startled by their own boldness, clasped each other tight, waiting for death that refused to arrive. The system's spell disintegrated. June slumped on the dais, stun probe wires dangling from his coat. Mara pressed her forehead to his. He strode to sit to stare down from last night's canna. Before finally falling to sleep, Mara pressed her forehead to his. "Hold on," she whispered. "We're winning." He wanted to laugh, but could not draw full breath. The electricity had scorched his diaphragm. "Already won," he said. "They can't unsee." Medical responders, their protocols in disarray, carried stretchers through crowds now too busy relearning touch to part easily. Two found June. Mara refused separation. A medic, after a second's deliberation, let her climb beside him, palm sealed to his. When they wheeled June into the triage tent, the attending doctor removed her filtration mask, wiped foggy goggles, and spoke with raw voice. "You just collapsed a regime. How does it feel?" "Feels?" June coughed. The air inside the tent was warm, unfiltered, human. "Feels like a hug," Mara laughed. The sound was unsterilized, unsupervised, and perfect. Recover was slow. Nerve damage paralyzed June's left arm for weeks. But each morning, Mara crawled into the hospital bed and let him feel her heartbeat instead of a beeping monitor. Nurses didn't interfere. Half the ward was occupied by people who had shed protective armor and found themselves ill, only with sensory overload, sunlight on flesh, gentlest breeze on scars. Outside, the ministry staggered. Officials tried to spin the incident: isolated mutation, experimental inoculation, reckless contagion. Yet every desperate press release featured disclaimers that couldn't survive the next citizen's handshake. Police collapsed into contradiction. They prohibited touch while video of their own staff hugging at press conferences circulated online. 2 weeks after the parade, the Council of Custodians suspended the No Contact Act pending review. By month's end, they repealed it, offering neither apology nor explanation, as though the last 5 years had been a clerical error. June testified sitting upright, Mara's arm around his shoulder, before an independent tribunal. He presented the decrypted archives, chain of custody intact. The records proved senior officials had known for 18 months that the spores were inert in vaccinated populations. They had withheld the data because fear was effective governance. Indictments followed. Spring thawed Meridian to its first real bloom since the old pandemic. Real flowers pushed through soil instead of synthetic beds. Parks once patrolled by sterilization drones became gardens, where children wrestled in grass too new to recognize their laughter as rebellion. June and Mara walked the riverside path beneath trees greening with tender leaves. He still wore a sling. She still carried a thermal blanket, in case his temperature fluctuated. Habits of caution not easily erased. When their fingers interlaced, skin brushing skin in infinite micro-conformations of aliveness. "Some will never forgive us," Mara said, "for shattering what kept them safe, even if it was a lie." June watched 2 old men clasp forearms in greeting, then collapse into weeping, after realizing how starved they'd been for contact. He squeezed Mara's hand gently. "Others will never forget we gave them back something they thought lost." She leaned into him. The warmth of her shoulder melted winter's last residue from his bones. "Do you ever think about the old slogan?" she asked after a while. "Attachment kills." "All the time," he said, "because they had it backward." She smiled. "Attachment saves." 2 bicycles clanged past, bells ringing in sync. A black and white dog bounded after them, leash trailing, tongue lolling. Someone shouted, "Thanks," when June caught the leash and passed it back. Their hands touched. Nobody flinched. Above the river, the bridge where they first met stood unchanged, iron, still slick with rain memories. But the billboard that once warned "Attachment kills" had been replaced. The new sign bore a single image: June and Mara's hug, captured mid-firework burst, silhouettes glowing crimson against the night. Underneath ran 4 words: "Hold each other close." June drew Mara to the rail. He rested his forearms exactly where he had months prior, only now his skin was bare, her hip pressed against his. She wrapped both arms around his waist and nestled her head under his chin. Traffic hummed, gulls screeched, a child laughed somewhere downstream. No sirens, no drones. The smell of the river reached them at last: whetstone, algae, and the sweet rot of fallen leaves. Not disinfectant, not static, real petrichor, quietly insisting that the world had never consented to be stripped of its tenderness. June closed his eyes and let himself belong to the moment's simple miracle, that 2 humans could share warmth without punishment, that the pulse in his veins was not a countdown to suffering, but a drum of possibility. He breathed in, chest expanding against Mara's. She breathed in alongside him. Their hearts, out of practice, remembered an older rhythm and aligned. In that shared beat, he heard the future approaching, not as marching orders or a metallic edict, but as the soft coming together of bodies daring once more to touch. An uncontainable renaissance of skin and soul.